24-22.
Sometimes the dates don't. It's okay, YouTube, Zoom doesn't care.
Great.
Yeah, Zoom just generates the links.
24-22.
You gotta go back to the Zoom.
Zoom just generates the links. Oh, it's a couple seconds behind. Did you turn the sound off on the computer?
But what if we have Counselor Nordic?
We can see her in the participants.
Right. But how will we hear her?
But just grab her.
How will we hear her between? Why not?
We'll change it.
Okay. All right, well, we will call this meeting of the Legislative Committee to order. President R. Hoy. Nishioka?
Nishioka.
Sorry. All right, updates and information sharing. Justin, you are up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff. Good to see everybody. We're kind of at a turning point in session, not that it's that big of a deal, but we saw the co-chairs framework come out yesterday. That's essentially what I said it is. It's a framework. It's a nice starting point on how we're going to look to get out of the building in terms of funding and funding priorities. So I'm excited about that. I had a meeting yesterday with Representative Sanchez, who's the co-chair on the House side. We had a meeting this morning with Senator Patterson. We also had a quick meeting with Representative Evans. So why this is an important time within the process is we've really got to narrow our scope and what our priorities are and make sure that we just continue to message that over the next few weeks and hope for the best when it comes to a May forecast. Obviously, we're in kind of a cuts mindset. I haven't had time to go through the entire framework of the co-chairs yet, but we've got a little work ahead of us. And so what we're going to do is try to narrow that expectation, and we're going to narrow our priorities, get that in our delegation's hands, and really just try to drive that over the next 6 weeks. So that's where we're at now. Next big stage will be that May forecast. There's a couple big projects. Mr. Mayor, when we were on the phone with Senator Patterson, semiconductors, obviously a big priority of this legislative body. If for some reason that doesn't happen, that might free up some dollars. Also the I-5 bridge and big transportation portion. There's some set asides for that. If those things don't happen or that gets pushed out into the future, there may be some dollars open up from that. And then hopefully we get a little better forecast in May than we expected. So there might be some extra dollars laying around the table. So even the priorities that aren't our number 1, 2, or our number 3, they're still in play, and we're still going to try until the very last minute to get those in where we can. So I think that's where the legislature is at right now. Policy priorities, some things have fallen off. Photo radar is still alive, still in play. Some of the other things we know aren't, but again, nothing's truly dead until they leave that building. So I'll be in there fighting for that. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, I've been in this for I've been in that building for 29 years or something. Finally saw a sitting senator with a CHIPS t-shirt on during a hearing, Ponch John right there on Senator Solomons t-shirt. I thought, this is great for a kid in the 70s. It's kind of finally come full circle.
It's a little funny with all the chip talk.
They're still having a lot of fun in that building. So even though it's not as fun as it used to be 20 years ago, I'm sure people say that nowadays, but I'm encouraged by that. And I'm encouraged by senators. I like to have a little fun in there. So that's my update, Mr. Mayor. I know we got a lot to go through with the staff today.
Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
Any questions for Justin?
Yeah, I do. And this is just a newbie question. So we had a very restricted list of priorities coming into this because we knew what was kind of before us. But what I hear you saying is that needs to be gotten more tuned in or smaller. And then also, is most of it dead except for one thing? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get smaller. I think we need to get narrower on a priority focus. So I think all those things are still in play. All those things are still on our list. But I think we'll look as the legislature as a body kind of put some outlook on that. I mentioned transportation. That might be a big package in 25. That might be a big package in 27. So how do our priorities fit within what the legislature wants to do as a body? So I don't think we're dead in the water on a lot of stuff, but we're really going to focus on our top priorities and make sure that we can get that stuff across the line, not just for our success, but I think that's what our community really needs, right? So I think those become the real focus and the real priority and the carry of our delegation. But in the meantime, we're still working those other issues, and we always hope for the best because some more dollars might come available. And it's really my job and your job and our staff's job to make sure that that messaging is really reinforced, but to also make sure how that not only plays into this community, but how that helps statewide with the goals of the governor, with the goals of our elected officials. And we just really have to find those areas because we're confident that it helps our community, but it also helps the state, right? So, and that can go beyond jurisdiction. So, it's a weird period where the co-chairs are like, we got to rein this in, we got to rein this in. But that always comes back a little bit, right? When people get excited or it helps them filter out some issues. But it's just incumbent upon us to make sure to continue to message that and also show how it affects people beyond just sale.
Great,
And
thank
to
you.
continue to develop the seeds of projects that could later be funded if things look better after the forecast. And so that's what we're doing as staff, is getting more things ready so that there's a bunch of different ranges of costs that it might be.
And that's a really,
Might fit.
Apologies for interrupting, but can you resend the Zoom link to Councilor Cartwright?
yes.
Go ahead.
Courtney's point is like, I haven't heard from anybody that they don't like these projects or don't want these projects to happen. I just think it's about timing and priority. But I mean, you have to keep those on the radar because legislative success oftentimes takes meaningful sessions. So not that these are new concepts, we carried some over from previous sessions, but it's really important because nobody ever just goes, that's not happening. They might say that's really important, but I don't know where that fits in the priorities now. So
Thank you.
So we as staff are, we talked about that March 17th deadline, which was usually what it does is it means that some bills aren't going to proceed. And so you get a little bit more sense of what we really need to be engaging in and active on supporting or requesting amendments for. This year, we didn't see kind of the same sea change that we usually see. There's a lot more that's staying active. And so I want to ask Jessica to speak a little bit to housing because that's a weird place for us just in watching what we're seeing. It's unusual what we're seeing this session. And so we don't have any specific bills, but we are still tracking quite a few, which we didn't anticipate. And so Jessica, do you want to just introduce, well, actually that probably changed a little bit on Monday or Tuesday, whenever that was.
But it changed this morning. Yes,
Quick update.
absolutely. So the bills that we had brought forth in the beginning are still all live and moving forward. Conversations happening behind the scenes. The next push is going to be with Senate Bill 611, which we talked about at our very first meeting. So, but
Sorry, Jessica, could you give us a skinny on 611 so that we're all catching up?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So 611, now that the House Bill of 2001 and 5019 have to move forward, the focus is now on Senate Bill 611, which we anticipated, which is the rent reasonable bill. That was brought forth to the legislative committee in our first week, as we knew it would be a big, there'd be a big emphasis and a big focus on it. And that is going to be coming up very soon. But
Maybe another sentence.
Is 611 in our packet?
No.
it's one that was already brought forth to the full council and supported.
So it would actually be in the things that have been approved by the city council.
Yeah, so it's got a whole lot of landlord tenant type verbiage
It
in
should be
it.
on the last page of your.
Hey, folks, good to see you all.
It was on the last page of the.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things that the city council's already approved. Those are the last ones. We have started that practice of showing the bills, so we're still watching. That's in the first section.
Rent reasonableness bill talks about limits to rent increases, and there's a lot.
I'm sorry, I think if you go over to the YouTube window and mute that particular window. There you go. That the double hearing ourselves talk. Sorry, Jessica.
Right. Talks about rent increase limitations and some other provisions in there that basically is in a package that they consider rent reasonable. So that one is now gaining traction now that the first policy bill has moved through the House. What I'm hoping to bring forth today, because things have been lightning speed, is a thought that maybe we could talk about concepts. So one of the concepts that existed in Senate Bill 847, which is one that we are watching, would really impact the affordable housing developers. And this is essentially a prevailing wage piece,
I saw from the league that that's gone.
all changed.
Oh,
Love to give you some updates that I just learned 10 minutes ago before coming here.
so just for background, this is about prevailing wage being applied to affordable housing projects.
Yeah.
So
We
it
should make
would
that like
make them more expensive.
yeah.
Yes. So it's an exemption that's existed in existing statutes. There was hope that there could be some enhancements to it to include potentially buildings that have mixed use, so that only the commercial piece would be prevailed and the affordable housing development could continue on. There was another piece in it that talked about the conversion, similar to Yapuna Hall, even though its former use was housing, for its very small time with DAS, it converted to commercial for office spaces. And so when we went to consider it residential construction and felt we had a good case for it, we were denied by Pulte. And so we had to pay the higher of full Davis-Bacon and Foley wages, which really was a big cost impact to the project, despite its former use as housing. So we're kind of in this place where is there an opportunity for us to make changes there so we can continue the advancement of building affordable housing without adding that cost. The thought was that it would stay in 847. Then it changed where they thought they might take it out of 847 and put it in 850. 850 now it has died. They have decided to take that provision out of 847 completely, and they thought they would put it in 979 with a focus only on childcare. I just learned about a half an hour ago that it's actually going to go into its own standalone bill, Senate Bill 977. 77. So it has moved in this last week about 4 or 5 times. So I wondered if we could discuss maybe if there's a concept that meets our priority that's in a bill, should we bring that bill forth? Or can we talk about the concept as it moves from bill to bill to bill to bill to bill? Because they're developing these packages. And so all of these conversations that are happening, I'm trying to track, but right now there's probably a list of 20 that say steady housing. And those are placeholder bills for all these conversations to put it together as a package. And so I'm having a difficult time with timing, bringing forth bills, because if I would have brought 847 or brought 850 to your attention, then it would already have changed by the time we got here.
So I think what the question is whether we want to look at the policy statement around affordable housing and find a way to expand that policy statement so that we're talking about preserving affordability even in the construction and development side. And whether, because again, just as Jessica's illustrating, some of these bills, remember that we've been talking about, there are good things about them and they're being messaged in a way that would be really challenging to come out in opposition against, but there's a little tiny thorn in it that we really want to try to influence. And so the question before you is, how do you want to handle this idea? Do you want to consider amending the policy statements? Do you want to let it go because affordable housing is important? How do you want to?
Well, I think that our policy statements should be broad enough that they cover it already, and if they're not, then we should amend them. I mean, affordability in my mind shouldn't be limited to the amount that at the end of the day, the person living there pays. It's all about supporting affordable housing is from acquisition to construction to actually delivery. To me, that a policy statement that supports affordable housing covers that spectrum already. That's in my mind, but I don't know what my colleagues are thinking.
So, again, just learning about this, maybe not have enough background. I feel that, again, trying to find ways to support that acquisition and building. I raised my eyebrows when you have to have the prevailing wage that may be so high that then you're outside of being able to build it.
It's certainly gonna limit the ability of.
Exactly, and so
Someplace
I would be in support of something that would help that structure getting completed and still being able to stay in affordability.
I think one of the questions we have to decide though is, does, for staff's sake, does our policy cover that currently? Or do we need to be more explicit with that policy?
I think we need to be more explicit. We just need to expand it so that staff have the guidance from us to be able to get where we need to go. In my mind.
So Wednesday, oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Counselor Nordyke, do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's funny that we are talking about affordability from soup to nuts, right? And I think it really ought to include from the construction phase. As recently as last night, kind of sort of related to what we're talking about, I received input from a community member saying, if we're going to provide affordability at the front end, when, for example, giving money to developers to build housing for the purposes of having it to be affordable, how do we ensure that it stays affordable? That they don't just get tens of millions of dollars up front to make a place affordable for maybe 10 years, and after that, they can charge whatever rates they want. That's the feedback that I happen to receive. That's only slightly tangentially related to what you're talking about, but it's very top of mind since that's just what I heard. I agree with you, Chris, that, you know, let's include the full spectrum, because part of the reason why we don't have affordable housing is we're not building enough. We haven't kept up the housing stock anywhere in the state where it needs to be. So I think it really does need to include from groundbreaking through rehabilitation of existing stock and so on.
Thank you. So I
Yep.
feel like you have the sense of the committee. So the question is, do we need to make an amendment to our,
Yes,
okay, so let's do that
excellent. I'll put that on your upcoming city council agenda.
for Monday night.
If you'd like to, we can
I
make it.
feel like it sounds like it needs to be more timely than in 2 weeks from now. Just,
We have hearings starting on Wednesday.
yeah, so let's get it on the agenda for Monday.
Okay. And then that's it. Before you didn't want to rush, but
I know, we have
I'll
to
be
be,
on the agenda.
we have to not be so rigid that we can't be
Excellent, shall do.
flexible for the session.
Yeah, and can we just make sure that the communication to all the counselors is that it's coming up? It's
Yeah.
new.
Yeah, let's just send them a heads up, but hey, watch for an agenda amendment. And this is why, because things are moving fast and we need some more flexibility within our policy statements, so. Yeah, and we have 4 of us here, so I'm assuming we'll be able to find one more person.
It comes from this committee and so I can just reflect in the notes that the committee is aware that things are moving rapidly and wants to ensure that there's more affordable housing continuing to develop in our community.
And we want to make sure that the entire council is aware.
Great.
Perfect,
Thank you.
thank
Is there
you.
anything else on housing, Jessica? Sorry.
That
This is my
encompasses
biggest-
all of it, I think.
Well, but Eunice has some others.
From my concern.
Excellent.
Eunice, you're up.
I just wanted to make you all aware of a couple bills or ideas that are happening. And one is 3414. I didn't see it in our packet. It's the bill that would establish the governor's housing accountability and production office, which is all about technical assistance to local governments, but also a place where developers and others could say that there's an issue with something that the city's doing around housing, and then be kind of a compliance enforcement piece of it. I think those details are still being worked out. We're trying to track exactly how it would work with all of our other appeal processes and accountability, et cetera. It also has a piece that would really preempt how we could use variances. So if people can't meet a standard, it would really limit how we could use those. We don't use those a lot in Salem, so I don't think it's a huge issue, but we're just tracking it. So I just wanted to let you know that hearing or work session happened this week. So we're just watching.
That sounds like a really important one to keep on top of, because this could be a fundamental game changer for some of the things we do here, so. Thank you. Please, I would definitely like to get more information on that bill and if there are things that we need to be doing, if we need to get Justin involved in terms of amendments and things.
Okay.
Let's do that.
And then the other one is House Bill 3569. And that one is a home builders bill that really looks at preempting our local land use authority, where a residential could be built anywhere essentially without meeting any standards. And in any case, it had a hearing or work session. This week, my understanding, we're working with the league, is that it's not moving forward in its current form, but there's been a kind of a commitment that the builders are going to work with the cities to come up, at least brainstorm ideas of expediting process, looking at barriers. So we've been invited to that conversation, and we were just meeting with the league today and other planners to kind of talk about what could we do, what are some ideas.
Isn't that the whole housing needs analysis?
Mhm.
And isn't that the whole concept behind that?
Yes.
And also, we're currently doing our own permitting efficiency study with support from Los Adams. And we're doing that because we have concerns about whether we can meet the housing production part from our side. So we're building out efficiencies and effectiveness throughout the process really quickly. By the way, we're finishing by the end of this fiscal year so that we can turn to housing production. So we're doing our own. We're doing our own in-house work.
Mhm.
So whether some third party needs to tell us how to do it better is an open question.
Will council hear back on that Moss Adams report for you all?
Yes,
Great, I'm really curious about that.
we're not quite finished, but we're getting a lot closer.
Is it today? It is today, but I'm just saying.
Today is today.
I think today is.
That's all I know.
I think today is the focus group with home builders, which is intentionally bringing that group of stakeholders together.
With
So
Los Adams.
with Moss Adams, yeah, and I think that's actually happening right now.
It's great news.
So Eunice, your question is whether we want to do anything about this or put it on the watch list.
Right. So we're participating in conversations with other cities. There's nothing concrete yet in terms of what it could end up being. My understanding is that there would be kind of a gut and stuff sort of situation with the bill. It would end up at Ways and Means so it could still live. So there's time to work on some sort of concept. So I just want to let you all know that that was happening.
So I think for sure we're adding 3414 to the watch list is what I'm gathering
Yes.
from this conversation. Would you like us to do that as well with this other housing production strategy?
Yes, please.
So, and just Eunice, I was listening, but it was going really quickly. House Bill 3469,
3569.
5?
Yes.
569.
Thank you.
How do we track and gut and stuff?
You just pay attention.
It's just gotta be paying attention with our coalition partners, so obviously Eunice will be on top of it, now you can see my home builder buddies in the building and just say, what's going on with this, what are you hearing? And just,
Okay.
that's where it gets awfully tricky, that's where we also kind of just keep everything that we have, knowing going forward with sessions that have been pop up or may not pop up, even though they're in its original form. Much like 850, people jumping the gun thinking that's dead. It really just moved into another area, or we might see it pop up again. It's kind of why you have boots on the ground in the building, and that's why coalition partners are so important in the process.
Thanks.
And why some of us are leaving our hair. So,
Good, I lost it years ago.
Wow. Wow there.
Okay, so, anything else on housing? There's so much. This is like, I think the housing section. Anything else that you guys want? Can we talk about safety in the workplace?
Sure.
We spoke about this bill a little earlier ago and it didn't disappear as we anticipated. Would you like to address it, Kirsten?
Yeah, it is actually going for a session on the 28th. And so this is Senate Bill 907, which is under the guise of workplace safety, which, you know, says that an employee acting in good faith may refuse to perform a task assigned by the employer in any of the following circumstances, right? They have apprehension that it would result in injury or impairment to the health and safety of the employee. As far as reasonably practicable, the employee or other employees has communicated or otherwise attempted to notify the employer of the safety or health risk. And these are like single bullets, and you don't have to meet all of them, right? The employer has failed to provide a response that is reasonably calculated to allay the employee's safety concerns regarding the safety and health risk associated with the assigned task, or the performance of the assigned task would cause the employee to engage in legal activity or criminal activity. The performance of the assigned task would cause the employee to report or remain at a work site during an evacuation due to a disaster or an emergency. And so to be able to refuse the task, it would be considered acting in good faith if under the same circumstances, a reasonable person can conclude that the performance of the task could result in injury or health impairment, right? So the challenge continues to be that we have first responders and we ask them to go to where the emergency is.
So I've heard there's an exemption for them coming.
Is there, it's
Public
still
safety.
not in here.
I know, so we gotta keep an eye on it.
Okay,
But what would the impacts, I guess my question is, what would the impacts be if we get that public safety carve out? And do we still need to have major concerns, or does that ease us back? And that might take some time to.
But like what happens when we have that next ice storm again? And I need to have road crews out or parks crews out pulling down trees that are blocking roadways. We still, in response to providing public safety, unless that's really huge and that considers road crews or water crews when there's, things going on at the island, so I guess it would depend on how that public safety is carved out. Are we just talking about first responders? Or are we talking about providing safety to the community as a whole?
It seems like there is,
That tells me we need to keep an eye on it regardless of the exemption for public safety.
this bill seems like it has a really great intention, but it's in its execution, it's just missing the boat. Councilor Nordic.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I hear what you're saying about that. I know in our packet, it says that our collective bargaining agreements reflect common understanding about safe workplace environments and provide mechanisms for employees to raise any concerns. So if that's the case, if our CBAs say what to do when you're sending out a road crew to hazardous conditions for an ice storm and such, if we feel confident that our CBAs already address those safety concerns from both the worker's perspective and the employer's perspective, then I'm not a fan of this particular bill. I'm wondering if this bill is really this bill sounds like a great bill for people who don't have a union, who don't have the kind of safety precautions and union stewards to look out for them for their best interests. I can imagine why you would need a carve out for code compliance officers whose work is dangerous, but they oftentimes don't get called public safety, even though that's a lot of what they do. So this bill is problematic to me because we have ways for our code compliance officers, for example, right now, to let us know if they have safety needs like ballistic vests. I know Chris and I work to support our officers in getting the ballistic vests that they wanted. So, I mean, I see good intentions here, but if our CBAs already provide those safety and accountability measures, then maybe it's a bill that needs more thought.
Justin, I'm looking to you for some advice because this is chief sponsored by two of our folks. So
Yeah, I think we'll keep tabs on it. I'll see if I can dive a little deeper on that exemption. And then we'll also, you and I can work together through Courtney with true impacts on what that means in terms of.
And maybe we need to have an
Safety.
education session with the senator about what this means in reality on the streets for us. And just help her understand the full spectrum and all of the safeguards that are already in place and the downsides that if this were to pass in its current form.
Yeah.
I feel like we need this.
We deserve to share that with our delegation, even beyond Senator Patterson. So whatever information we get, I think would be helpful.
And it looks like we have 4
insert ourselves
days.
in that discussion.
Looks like we have about 4 days until it's work session. So, thank you.
So,
There's always other catch.
just to.
But-
So you're hearing that it might be getting some amendments for public safety. So our interest would be to expand how people understand public safety so that we have more of our work represented, not, no offense, but not just police and fire.
Yes.
And making general awareness about how CBAs function in supporting our workforce.
Well, to me, that's the thing. It's not so much about public safety or not public safety. It's about when are there other safeguards already in place, i.e. a collective bargaining agreement. And all of our frontline workers within the city and most cities are covered by a collective bargaining agreement.
And you know what
So-
I wonder is not just the public sector exemption, but if something more discrete is required, I wonder if it's a public sector exemption for cities of some size. Just because I don't pretend to know everything about the majority of urban cities, which are much smaller. We might have to check with the league about whether that is appropriate for their membership, but we might go with mid-sized cities.
Counselor, I see your hand is still up. Is that new or is that?
It is new. Yeah, I
Okay.
lowered it, raised it again.
That's okay.
I'm reading through the bill. And it says any employee acting in good faith may refuse to perform a task in any of the following circumstances. And the one that really jumps out at me is the performance of the assigned task would cause the employee to report to or remain at a work site during an evacuation due to a major disaster or emergency. There's going to be times when we need people to respond to emergencies or wildfire relief or ice storms or heat domes. So yeah, I feel like we need to make sure that we're still sending people in harm's way, because yeah, their work is inherently dangerous with the appropriate safety precautions in place. So I don't have time to read the entire bill from start to finish, but I can see the great intentions here for folks who do not have those protections. But I would like to have us follow up on it and find out how this would really work for all of our public safety responders.
And the final kind of coup de grace of the bill is, once I've refused the work, I can use sick leave as allocated by Oregon Sick Leave Act to cover my hours that I am not at work. So essentially it creates a PTO out of paid leave order.
Yeah, that's not great. Counselor,
Yeah, I've just been listening to everything you guys are saying and I couldn't agree more, but also thinking, how would something like this interact with a time when a state of emergency is, or a city of emergency, right? When Keith says we have a problem, does this supersede that still, or it's, like,
Currently it does.
right? And if we're looking at exemptions, maybe that's something that we need to also add to the table to.
I mean, the way I hear the bill, a firefighter could say, ooh, sorry,
Yeah,
I can't, that looks dangerous and I can't go there.
Or
Like,
a
it's
police officer
literally-
could say, I'm not going to the drug house
Right.
because illegal activity is happening there.
Right.
I mean, it is wide open on ways that you can
Yeah.
refuse what our primary directives of some of our work is.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. Sounds like we need to have a conversation. So, great. Let's move on then to public meetings.
So excited for this.
Everybody's favorite topic.
Really important. It is not quite a secret as what we discussed, but it is equally important, Mark.
We talked at the first meeting of this session about a variety of public meeting and public records bills. One I want to bring back to the committee is House Bill 2805 in your packet. This is one where it codifies a lot of things that have happened in case law regarding serial meeting, what constitutes communication and would constitute a public meeting. Those aren't the concerns. There was added a section 5 of this bill, which allows a process before a complaint is made for violation of a public meetings law to the Oregon Government Ethics Committee, where a person who feels that there's been a violation of the public meetings law would file a complaint with the city, and the city is required to respond to that complaint, either saying, hey, the facts that you're citing are incorrect. Here's what actually occurred and why what actually occurred is not a violation of the public meetings law. or saying, yes, we agree your facts are correct, but here's why it doesn't constitute a violation of the public meetings law, or you know what, you're right, your facts are correct, and we violated the public records law, and here's what we're going to do about it. And it requires people to go through that process. Oh, and we require public bodies to then send a copy of that complaint onto the Oregon Government Ethics Committee. And before a person can file a complaint with the Oregon Government Ethics Committee, they would have to go through that direct process with the city. Not sure, I won't speculate on the intention as to behind this bill, but as we've discussed before, it is concerning that there is going to be this process where the city is required to respond to complaints and in writing issue a formal statement, perhaps admitting that it violated the public records law and
Public meetings law.
public meetings law, forgive me. And the variety of basically making a formal statement against interest is concerning to the legal department.
Well, I still don't understand the concept of this bill because ethics violations are individual based. They're not based on the city doesn't get charged with an ethics violations. It's individuals who may have participated in an illegal meeting who are the recipients of the ethics violations. And so for the city to be opining on whether or not individuals committed an ethics violation, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, because the city is never subject to that complaint. It's the individuals involved. So I don't understand the logic.
I would agree with you, Mayor.
Okay.
But it would also give us an opportunity to build a case for them.
Well, also,
Each time.
yeah,
Each time.
okay. So is this bill, does it have legs?
It's headed down to Ways and Means, so
That's why we're bringing it forward.
Senator Patterson probably gets it in general government. I don't know. So it'll be sitting down there, so.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Mayor, there was one other area of concern as noted in the review of this bill. It would also make any fine that's issued if it gets to the Oregon Government Ethics Committee and if they levy a fine. It then puts that penalty against each individual member of the governing body if they're found in violation, and prevents any level of indemnification by the governing body.
Isn't that already the case?
I don't know regarding the indemnification point, but
If the city can't pay, like if I have a sustained ethics violation, the city's not gonna pay it.
a suggestion on possible amendment would be to allow it if indemnification if the violation occurred at the advice of the governing body's attorney. Go down that road.
I do know that there have been cases where the governing body has paid for the council of individual elected officials. So maybe that's what they're getting at. The actual fine, I think, is never indemnified.
I'm really interested where this is coming from. Like, does that make sense? Like, why is this a thing?
Well,
Did something happen? I mean, right, that is always the case.
So Rep Soso is formerly the chair of the Ethics Commission. He's one of the sponsors. And then the other two, one is from the Portland Metro area, and the other one's from Grants Pass. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll try to get some.
Thank you.
And then I'll work with Mark.
It would be helpful to know where this thing's headed.
So would you like to put this on the watch list or would you like how?
Let's leave it on the watch list for now. Let's hear from Councilor Nordyke first.
I had the same, I think that was Virginia who just spoke up. Where is this coming from? Sometimes it feels like a solution in search of a problem. I don't know what problem it is they're trying to solve. So I agree with putting it on the watch list. I don't know. I think we do a great job here following all of our public meetings law requirements, but maybe that's our experience. Maybe the experience in their own jurisdictions is not so great. I have no idea, but that's what I basically was just going to say ditto to what Virginia had to say.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, so we'll keep that on the watch list for now. Dustin's going to see if he can get some more information that might not be published online, that might be available. Short-term rentals.
We just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that there was a bill out now to try to restrict short-term rentals in historic districts. Do you want to explain more of it?
Sure.
We just want to have awareness because it's coming from our delegation and
Yes.
we may be asked to provide comment.
Yes, this has been weaponized against us, we understand. And specifically in Salem City Council. Yes.
So this is a bill that I think has a work session in April. And it would restrict our ability to, basically you couldn't have a short-term rental in a residential historic property, but would need to be a property that was taking advantage of the state special assessment. So it's not all historic districts or all designated properties. So we asked the state, working with our historic preservation officer, Kimberly Fitzgerald, that how many properties we have, and we only have 3 residential properties as the bill is written that would be impacted. But obviously we want to watch this.
Is the recent one that we've made a decision about one of those 3?
Oh, that's a good question.
And it
I'm
is.
seeing a yes.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't assume.
Yeah.
Give,
I can ask for the address.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
My concern, Justin, about this bill, well, I have many concerns about this bill, but I'm really worried that I understand that there might be a bill, from the coast that this could tie, even if this bill dies, then it could tag onto and become an amendment to another bill. So that's the one we really need to watch. I'm not so concerned about this particular bill passing, given the timing, but I think that other one is the one we really need to keep an eye on, and that this language could find its way into it. And I don't know the number of that bill.
Okay,
It's
so
gone.
keep an eye for stuff.
It's a gone bill.
Courtney and I'll figure out the.
Thank you.
So maybe what we should do then, for clarity for staff, is puts whatever it is, this idea on the watch list, this particular bill,
Yeah.
whatever bill involves. Is that
I think that just our preemption guidance covers this in terms of staff, in terms of direction. So yeah, this is something we need to keep an
So
eye
when
on.
you say the coast, Mr. Mayor, pardon me, Counselor, when you say the coast, is it Senator Anderson?
Gomberg.
It's Gomberg. Okay, great.
I'd like to ask a question. What I'm curious about is if this is, and maybe you can mention, is this all historic districts? An example I'm going to give is, say, in Baker City, downtown historic area. From what I understand, there's a lot of short-term rentals that are in that downtown core. I have no idea if they are owner occupied. Is this a bill that's going to be affecting a lot of these smaller towns or cities that have, historic buildings that they're trying to encourage visitors and participate in?
Yeah, my understanding is that if they're taking advantage of the tax incentive to make improvements and not have a full assessment in 10 years of the state program, if they're under that state program, then they'll be impacted by this. But if they're just in a historic district or residential district, or they're designated as a historic building, but they're not under that program, they wouldn't be impacted.
So it's very specific programs. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just based on all of the conversation and feedback so far, I think we're adding 3 bills to the watch list, and we are moving an additions report to Monday night to reflect a change in the policy statements so that we can take advantage of whatever evolves and have a position that we can push forward around making sure affordable housing can retain its affordability throughout the process of development. Excellent. Is there any other feedback for staff?
My only other question I had, which is not related to the bill, but it's related to our calendar, is I see we have a meeting scheduled for next Friday. Do we intend to keep that meeting?
Well, that's the question, and it's your prerogative. Things are moving awfully quickly, and it might be advantageous for you all to get together and hear from staff about what we're seeing, and you could share with us what you're seeing.
Okay.
I noted at the bottom of the agenda, we have a meeting scheduled on the docket right now for the 31st as well as the 14th of April. It seems like a decent cadence. If you'd like, we could drop the 31st next week, or we could drop the 14th. It's your prerogative.
Let's keep it both.
I'm really interested to see how this housing situation works out, and I think it would be really important for us to stay up to speed on what's happening.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would think that makes sense for us to meet Friday because there's a lot of stuff coming right off this framework and a lot of the housing interests and some of these other public sector things that I'll try to get information on early in the week.
I have a question, but this is in relationship to me speaking with Counselor Phillips. In that he was very concerned about the hospital bill, basically that I think is going on right now, that's asking them, the emergency service, to kind of serve almost as a site for homeless. And he's very concerned about that. I didn't see that on here, but I believe that they're already in discussion about it.
I have some background on that bill.
Thank you.
I think, yes, and I think it's broader. I think it's about, well, you try it.
Yeah, so there was a second.
There's no way through the bill without bothering someone.
Yeah, so we've heard, Salem Health is one of our partners in Rebel Crossing, so they did bring this to our, we have had conversations about this. So this stems from the woman who was discharged from the Salem Hospital, and she had requested to go to the Arches Day Center, and she passed away on their steps. The intent of the bill is to ensure that when patients are discharged from the Salem Hospital, that they are taken to somewhere that is open, like a shelter or a warming space or whatever that may be. The issue on the hospital's perspective is that it's very difficult to keep someone until something is available. And so there may be this backup in the hospital. And not only that, they don't provide the transportation, they just call the taxi. The individual themselves makes the decision on where they go. So this would be essentially holding patients in the ER until they can work out all of those details. And is this realistic? So that's the two sides that are happening right now that we've heard from both parties on. And Jimmy Jones from Arches is very, I think, part of the sponsors of the bill. We're working with Jimmy in coordination. And so that's happening.
He's been very visible in his testimony in support of the bill. So
I think that this bill is a catalyst for some really great conversations that are happening, and I think we should just keep an eye on it for now.
Yeah, I think basically I'm saying that I know that Counselor Phillips was wanting to keep an eye on.
Great, thank you. Yes. Is there anything else for the order?
As a committee, are you asking us to put that on the watch list?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything going on with the streetcar?
I don't know
Does
if it
anybody know?
survived.
I think that it's in the Joint Transportation Committee, so I think that means that all bills in the Transportation Committee live for now.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on it.
But given yesterday's news about priorities, the money issues from yesterday, I would think that its likelihood its likelihood of not passing increased yesterday, but I don't know for sure.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Nordyke, for joining us remotely. Thank you all for being here. We will see everybody next Friday.